It's YNK, so since I stole all of Thorin's gigs, at the very least, what you guys can do is subscribe to his YouTube channel, so go on and do it right now.
Gamersops is the best. It lasts ages and it's consistently high quality. So nothing like FalleN then. You know what? The only sense in which FalleN has any similarity to Gamersops is that today you can get samples of Gamersops for free. That's right, free. Just like FalleN has been for the playoffs week of the last 4 majors. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because you can get free samples of Gamersops using my code Thorin, Thorin, at gamersops.gg with free international shipping. They'll just send you them anywhere around the world, even potentially middle of nowhere, right? So just go to the website, check it out. There you go, freebies. Now, as the title of the video says, FalleN is the most overrated player ever in Counter-Strike. In fact, you might remember, I obviously did a now quite notorious / infamous tweet, didn't I? On the 12th of May, 2022, I said, FalleN is the most overrated player in the history of CSGO, has never ever been the best player on any lineup, but people tried to make it sound like the guy was Zidane. And then I tagged PGL Major. Now, the 12th of May, if people don't know, was the day that FalleN and Imperial had just beaten Forza and gotten through the first stage of the PGL Antwerp Major with that like last dance Imperial lineup. They went to the next one. By the way, they didn't make the playoffs, unsurprisingly, although they did actually manage to upset Cloud9, so fair play on that one. And so the reason I made this tweet, aside from the fact I agree with it all, I stand by it all, I'm about to explain why in this video, and I should really have done this video ages ago. If I'd been smart, I'd have done it the day after or a week after, wouldn't I? But at the time, I had a bazillion idiots messaging me on Twitter, and I used to read the tweets, so got me a bit annoyed, didn't it? Now, what I will say is this. This is where I do have something of a perverse sort of sense of how history works, because as the historian, as someone who's spent his life following these narratives, building these narratives, analysing the game, talking to people, trying to understand what's going on in the game, I really hate it when someone, especially if they're overrated, has like a pop-off game and everyone's either like, he's back, or like, he did, yeah, I've always said he was the best. Like, wow, hello, everyone said he wouldn't do it. Because what actually happened here, and so what I do, my perverse sense of history is, I don't wait until you get banged out like the last game of this major he had didn't make the round of 8, and then do the tweet, which, by the way, even then they'd go, oh, now you're just piling on because you got eliminated. Because stupid stans who have a parasocial relationship, essentially the message is, don't ever analyse or critique my player. Only I get to say what he is. He's a god and he's the best and everyone will say so. It's almost like if there was that sort of an atmosphere surrounding someone and that was the discourse and the way you were gaslit, you would think they were the most overrated ever, because it would be all people overrating them and always thinking they're better and never being able to see their... Ooh, okay, I think we're starting to get somewhere. So when I made this tweet, what I like to do is I like to do it when they're at their peak, when they're at their zenith of like a big moment. I like to come out and go, you know what? Everyone else is saying the stock's going to the moon. I'm saying this is it. I'm shorting it all the way down here and I'm saying it's over. This is it. Like, this is overrated. You guys are buying the hype. This is nonsense. You're gassing them up. So this one, obviously, was the one that got mega flamed, that trended on Twitter for a whole week, etc. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's get into what I was talking about when I said this, because I stand by every single part of it. So first of all, it's the concept of what it means to be overrated, because this is a term people throw around all the time, kind of like super team, when no one ever defines it. There is no like dictionary definition you can look up and then that explains who, right, so that would be this one is overrated, but this one isn't. It's so subjective, and so what you're looking for is the idea of a consensus, and the irony is there's not a consensus on what overrated means. Like, I think to a lot of fans and young people who are illiterate or don't read or don't think and use critical thinking capabilities, I think they think overrated means I think he is bad. And they think underrated means I think he is good. Even though, by the way, there could be a player who's actually amazing who's overrated. I actually thought Zima was overrated for quite a many years. Meanwhile, there could be a player who's actually bad who's underrated. Like, you know what? In a way, Drop's certainly not an elite player, but I thought he was underrated at times in FURIA and did do his job. I think this player's out. Stico, another classic example, right? Now, in the same way as those don't mean I think he is good or bad, it also doesn't mean when you say he's overrated that nobody says he's bad. That's not what it means. Same as underrated doesn't mean nobody says he's good. Because the other thing people do is they take a statement like that that's about a group consensus, an aggregate of opinions out there and what is generally thought, and they go, well, I've never said that, or I never read anyone say that, or everyone knows that, or everyone, and then they just try to do their own version, or they take a single one, like the particular instead of the general. Like, well, I don't think, well, that's irrelevant. It's whether overall the rating, doesn't matter what fucking you think. Billy Nobody on the Twitter, just replying to me on the Free Bird app, raging off your tits because I'm calling out your God. By the way, what a shit way to use the human brain function to worship, to just fucking pour adoration over someone who plays video games. Not even once, mate. Grow the fuck up. So to me, when you do this, there are two ways you can talk about someone being overrated. And I'm going to explain this. The most literal, the most simple way to do it, I think this is where people get lost. It would be the player with the lowest performance level consistently and career, but the highest consensus opinion and value. In the most extreme sense, they're the most overrated player. The trouble is, we're talking in that scenario about players that would just barely be on the radar. People would barely care about them. They have no relevance. They're not playing in the big matches because they have such low performance and low career. Like, they're essentially irrelevant. So on an esports scale, we wouldn't talk about them. They wouldn't be relevant. There wouldn't be someone that we'd waste time even talking about being overrated because it'd be so irrelevant. They'd just disappear immediately under the water, wouldn't they? So I have to explain something to you I call the esports scale concept. This is where so many people get it wrong about players being good or bad. In pro esports, the tier 1 pros are the 0.1% of all players. Or you can think of it this way. If you think like 1% is people who potentially could be pro, the tier 1 are the 0.1%. And so as a result, by that logic, every single tier 1 pro, every single one, is in the 99.9th percentile in the world of how good you are at the game. And they are all, in terms of all players ever, very good, extremely good at the game. But in the pro scene, especially if you talk about tier 1, the only level I care about, it's only those players, tier 1, that we're talking about. And so Dennis from old Sprout and Mouse is much, much worse than Simple on Eco, even though he's incredibly better than me. He's closer to Simple on Eco than I am to him. But if you take me out of it, he's miles apart from Simple and Eco. So if instead I take that 0.1%, this is what I do, and I make that the whole scale of what I'm considering at the pro level, so as a result, 0 to 100% is this whole scale of tier 1, then that means that it is worse. Dennis is 1% or 0, isn't he? Whereas Simple is best is 100% or 99%. And so Dennis is shit compared to Simple. I mean, I know Dennis will say, well, I haven't been played for years. Why am I getting it? Because in this scenario, you'd be the most overrated if I was using the other criteria, wouldn't I? So I'm pointing out here, you can see how the scale changes because of what we're hyper-focusing on with the microscope of pro playing esports. So to me, this is the alternative way to do overrated, and it's how I do it. The most overrated player is a player who plays in tier 1, who's maybe even an above average or sometimes a top player, but he's rated way too high. As if he's the best at his role, like contender for best player in the world, one of the very best to ever play. I think actually in that scenario, it's more extreme to overrate that player when we're talking about the top end of the scale. Because when you go to the top end, the difference also can be significant. Because that's how incredible the best players of all time are. Like, I'll give you an example from last year. So Simple was the player of the year last year, deservedly so. He should have been. It was between him and Zewu, and he did it at the bigger tournament, so he gets to win that one. Now, if someone said to you at the end of last year, Monacy was as good as Simple. In fact, maybe he's better. Maybe he was the best player of 2022. Surely you would react if you watch all the tournaments and you've got like a critical mind. Like, what? What? No, I won't even accept that. No way Monacy is. Then you'd get into all the reasons why. And that would seem even more laughable to you than someone thinking that like some bad player, like someone say, I think Drop is good. Not even saying it's just good. You'd be like, yeah, whatever. It's no biggie, is it? This would seem way more egregious, right? This is what I'm getting to. Meanwhile, though, look at the context. They're both CIS AWPers for teams that won a tournament each and were some of the top 5, top 10 teams in the world. Monacy was even ranked 7th by HLTV.org in that top 20 list you all worship. Meanwhile, Simple was ranked number 1. It's only the difference between 1 and 7. Meanwhile, I'm talking about FalleN, like, where'd you go? He's way better than loads of other pros, isn't he? No, it's much more relevant whether Monacy is as good or better than Simple than it is how good Dennis or Drop or in past years Steiko would be, because he's nowhere close to the best player on his team. So as a result, that would make, if you made that opinion, Monacy the most overrated player of 2022 for my money. Hence my FalleN opinion. So let's talk first about what FalleN was and then what he is. He was a very promising CS 1.6 AWPer, but he wasn't a superstar player in the world. He wasn't like one of the best players in the world or close. He wasn't anywhere close to even the elite AWPers like the Delpans, Markelovs, even people like Freese were better. He was nowhere close in 1.6 as well to matching the performance of Kogu over his whole career. He was slightly better than him at the end of 1.6, and he had nowhere close to the career of Kogu. He only played a few years towards the end at like the tier 1 level in CS 1.6. Now, in CSGO, he was a very good CSGO in-game leader in the early years. I'm talking, forget even the years they won the major and had the 2015. They had that breakout with Kaboom /Keedstar /Luminosity Gaming because they had to keep switching orgs. So they had like the MLG X Games upset at the beginning of the year. They had the Clutch Con, I think it was upset that they had, like a map at least. They qualified to the major ESL1 kind of eats it at the LAN qualifier, very legit over some other big teams. When they got to that major, they won the 2 BO1s and got to the playoffs, but then they got banged out in the quarters. Next major that they already qualified into was Legends. They got top 8 again because they won the 2 BO1s, got banged out in the quarterfinals, although this one was closer. Then they got to the next major because they were Legends again. They won the 2 BO1s this time. Even one was over Fnatic, which is a pretty legit win. They got banged out in the quarters. These are sometimes close games, but they're getting eliminated here. The only best of 3, that particular core, before they got in the FNX, Taco, Zeus players and coach, the only best of 3 that lineup ever won against a top 10 ranked opponent was like a CVO, and it was against Titan, who was in dodgy form at the time and basically was themselves fading away. That's it. They weren't a great series team. But if you actually look at what they were working with, I think these results are amazing. Some of it's thanks to the format of the major, but some of these results are amazing. You're having to win BO1s over top ranked teams, even if there's a BO1. Like, this is all very legit stuff. I thought he did a great in-game leading job. I actually think he had lesser pieces than all the other top 10 teams, but he's getting the majors, and then he's getting top 8. Like, this is legit. I mean, remember, before Cologne, he only had Fur as like a star talent. He could sometimes frag himself, but only Fur was like a true, like, potential, like, top 20 player in the world. And he was a beast, by the way. FalleN was nowhere close to the great players and the great AWPers. And by the way, he wasn't even an AWPer a bunch of this time. He had that guy ZQK who never made it in as an international AWPer, who was supposed to be the AWPer. And then you look at some of the other players he had Bolts and Steel. Not when they were good years later in Team Liquid and then later on. No. This is when they were really raw, when they would make a lot of mistakes, when they were sort of collapsing some of the big games. I think at this period of time, he was doing a fabulous job with like man advantage. If he's up 5v4, 4v3, they play correctly, they play smart. And even if there's lesser players, it means he can win some rounds, he can win some games against better teams. He had a whole bunch of smokes and things he was bringing to the game. He was doing all that like Gamers Club or whatever it was called, where he was like doing tutorials and explaining stuff to the rest of the Brazilian scene and other people who could translate, or he did the odd one in English, I remember. Now, then he got Cold Zera, who was basically the breakout player of 2015, except he probably just came along too late in the year to get that. Maybe like Flamey would get that title or something. And by the end of the year, when they got that proper lineup with FNX and Zeus and Taco, Cold Zera by the end of the year is like a contender for best player in the world. Like, he's getting to that sort of territory. He just has to now go deep in a major. Then FalleN gets FNX, Taco and Zeus. The team becomes a true contender almost immediately. He carries that through to early 2016. They win their first big trophy at the major, MLG Columbus Major. And then you just start to see them using the style that him and Zeus helped to pioneer in that team. Late round strength in 2v2s and 3v3s. Cold Zero, constant big production of numbers, constantly just excellent play, very high consistency. People give him resources, but he uses them to carry the game. Mega player carrying at the majors. FNX is clutch, quite underrated. Taco plays all the shit roles. First, still a beast, but willing to make space and let other people carry the game. And then what does FalleN bring? He has the clutch AWP in. He's doing some good calls. Their map pool's really strong. That's why I said in January of 2016 that he was the best in-game leader in the world for me. In January, before they won the major, months before they won the major, before they made the final at Katowice. So why am I saying that when he's only been in like the DreamHack final or whatever? Because there's more context. It's not as simple as like he's the best, but like by far. At the time, Fnatic was winning all the events, but they didn't have Pronaxes when they switched to Dennis, if you remember. Astralis, device is really good, but they're in shaky form. This is when they're not figuring it out. Later on, they end up getting Kirby not that many months later. Envious can win the odd tournament, but they're already fading. Happy Style looks like shit. They're just feeding on 4 spies. Na'Vi has Starix, who's doing a great job, also with like some middling pieces, but he's the coach. He's not actually an in-game leader, is he? And then MSL's Dignitas just wasn't good enough yet. They didn't have config and They didn't have, well, they had config, but they didn't have Magisk yet. So in 2017, after you win the majors, you win all that great stuff in 2016. 2017, FalleN gets Phelps. And they become an even heavier fragging team. Because now, coldzera and Fur are both playing like two of the absolute best riflers in the whole world. They really might have been 2 top 5 players in the world most of the year. And they had complementary styles because Fur's so aggressive, pushing forwards. coldzera's the guy who comes in from the back and just cleans the round up and closes it all and mid-rounds it all. In CT side scenarios, Fur does all those pushes. coldzera stays on his site and just mops everyone up. It was so amazing. You couldn't ask for better riflers as an in-game leader. But FalleN was still a top in-game leader that year. And by the way, I'll just say this, from MLG Columbus through to like the E-League Boston Major, if you go watch those majors and consider that a couple of them, 3 of them or something, they had standings, I actually think SK/Luminosity, there's a world where they could actually for real have won 5 straight majors. They won 2 straight, but they could have won, obviously, let me think, so they won the 2 in 2017 was the one where they lost to VP in a really close one, when they were using Fox, like, if they actually just have FNX or Phelps already there, they could win that major. Then at Krakow, they lost to Astralis, who played Inspired in that quarters. If they win that game, I think they win that major. Then you go to the Boston Major. That was another one where they had to use Phelps, even though now they've already had Bolts and won 3 tournaments with him. And they still get to the semis. They're still in like a 3-map semi-final against Cloud9. They could have won this major as well. They could actually have won all 5, especially if they had their real lineups at them. So I definitely don't overrate FalleN the in-game leader at this point in time, although he had some amazing pieces, certainly, because he helped coach them. He helped give them some of that theory. He helped explain those things to them. He was the godfather of Brazilian CS. But during these years, even at his peak of individual play, I think he was really overrated. If people don't know, I'll just show you here. On that list that everyone worships, in 2016, FalleN was ranked the 2nd best player in the world after coldzera. In large part because of the titles that they won, winning the majors, etc. coldzera, by the way, world number 1 player. World number 1 player the next year, in 2017 as well. So FalleN's ranked 2nd in 2016, and in 2017 he's ranked number 6. And by the way, that's the year where they're not even in any major finals. Meanwhile, let's just go look who else is on those on there. Aside from coldzera, his literal number, he has the number 1 player in the world, by the way. As well as that, on this one, at number 15, Fur, even on a year that was like a down year. And then at number 19, FNX, because that's what a fucking joke, the absolute state of these lists, and that fucking Serbian bum who made them. Like, these are just a disgrace to history. The idea that, like, they had 4 of the best players in the world on that team. This is a list for stars. This is a list of people who are the best on their team. In the top 10, almost every player, every team probably should have a player on this list. That's how it works. You don't understand sports. Like, what is this? Like, this is mental. Then go look at 2017. Yeah, you're coldzera number 1. You have Fur number 3. So on this year, FalleN has the number 1 and number 3 players in the world, according to HLTV, but then he himself is number 6. Child, please. Are you fucking kidding me? What are you talking about? And you go and look at the stats. Like, it just doesn't bear up. So let's go look. Here's him in 2016. Now, the kills this year are really good. The deaths are really low. Okay, remember, he does have literally monsters like Fur who are going forward, killing everyone. coldzera, winning out. If people coming in CT, you can't fuck with him if you go pit on Inferno. His monsters mowing everyone down with his spray. Good stats, though. Very good stats. Rating's still not bonkers. 1.14. His best ever year, 1.14. ADR's average. But he doesn't have that many deaths. And he has pretty good amount of kills. Very good. I think KPR is the king stat. This is his best year. Impact. I mean, I don't even know if that counted back then because it was like the 1.0 system. Did we even have impact? Was it even that big a deal back then? Pretty good. He plays better against the best opponents. 1.18 because obviously he's very clutch, isn't he? And that would get in the heads of the opponents. Yeah, it's good stuff. Problem is, who are the other players this year playing AWP? We're not talking about in-game leader. We're talking about player. That's what my tweet was on. I never said in-game leader. Player. Although you'll find out I think he's an overrated in-game leader too. This year, how about Simple? Remember he's playing for Team Liquid? Semis are 1 major, lost to Luminosity. Finals are the other, lost to SK. But it's not a 1v1 game, it's a team game, isn't it? Let's look at Simple's numbers, shall we? Impact better, ADR better, more deaths, because he's playing in Team Liquid, a team that speaks fucking English, and he's playing with players that aren't as coordinated, don't have the style and coherence that the FalleN team did. FalleN, the in-game leader, allowed FalleN the player to look overrated. How about that in 2016, 2017? Look at the kills though, boys. This is the king stat. 0.82. That is fucking unbelievable. And despite all the problems that Simple had in his teams, with teammates finding the roles, kicking out a Drain, bringing in Kusta, he barely has a lower rating on HLTV against the best opponents than FalleN, who's in the absolute best team with three other players in the HLTV top 20, including the best player in the world. Then let's go and look. How about Device? Remember that guy? Orpa? This wasn't even one of his best years in terms of his team, but individually, it was one of his absolute best years. So ratings better, impact's way better, ADR's way better, kills aren't even that, deaths aren't even that much higher, but they are low still, just not as low as FalleN's. Kills are better, much better. Also, not that much worse. And remember, this is a team where he used to chalk against best opponents. His team used to chalk. His team didn't win tournaments in this time period. He's a 1.12 himself. How about old Kenny S? This was in theory a down year for Kenny. Envious was falling off, right? 1.16, right there where FalleN is. 1.18 impact, pretty good impact. 76, he actually has better ADR. KPR, 0.76, pretty good. Not as many deaths, but not more deaths, but still not too many. Doesn't have a very good record against top 5 opponents, sure, because this team didn't do very well. They were actually fucking shit in the meta against good opponents. Yeah, I'll give you that one. He's got that over him. How about Guardian? This was in theory a semi-down year until Guardian joined FaZe, remember? Ratings a bit lower. Impacts whatever. ADR's just a bit lower. Deaths are a bit higher, but still low for an AWPer. Well done. KPR, remember, these are primary AWPers. These are the ones who were demanded to win the game. FalleN wasn't in that way. He added to it by winning clutches. He had people like coldzera to win him games. KPR, 0.72. He himself, 1.10 in a lot of these big matches. So lower, yeah, 0.08 lower. But he's still doing well. Obviously, 2016 was when Guardian had the hand issues. These are world-class players. Then let's go look in 2017, shall we? So you go to the next year, it already gets worse. 2017, he's not even at 0.7. This is, by the way, the second best individual year of his career. Ratings down to 1.13, impact 1.10, 73 ADR, deaths at almost 0.06, and he isn't even 0.7, but you can round up to 0.7, right? Against top 5 opponents. How the fuck is this guy number 6 in the world, by the way? Top 5 opponents on a team that won something like 8 LANs that year and was in the semis of a major and the quarters of the other. 1.08. That was like Guardian on a down year, like I just showed you, because he was carried this year. He had coldzera and Fur. Monsters. Are you fucking kidding me? So let's go look at the other players. Simple in 2017. Because remember, that was it. Obviously, Simple was in Team Liquid most of the other one until the latter part of the year. This is when he's in Na'Vi. Remember, it was a bad year, everyone told me, for Simple that year. Down year, because they don't make the finals, etc., do they? What do you know? He has a 1.26 rating, amazing impact, monster ADR. Deaths are a bit higher, but it's still quite low for someone who's the primary carry, and insane KPR. And what's he doing against top 5 opponents? Bonkers shit, homie. He's doing like prime FalleN shit on his down year. Now let's go look at Device, shall we? 2017, obviously a great year. His team wins a major. They're getting right up there again. Still great kills, still low deaths, still higher ADR, still higher impact. 1.18 rating. This is actually, in theory, in terms of his career, not even Device's best year. We'd have them later, right? 1.10 against top 5 opponents. Choker, right? Is he? Because this was the year when, in theory, they weren't the all-time greatest starlists. Then go look at Kenny. Remember, this is when Kenny, again, is supposed to be falling off. He's having times where he doesn't care. Great rating, good impact, higher ADR, still almost 0.8 kills. Yeah, he has higher deaths, but his kills are way higher too. And how's he doing against top opponents? Oh, beast still. Almost near FalleN's peak on a down year because he's Kenny S. Then there's Guardian. 2017 is when he joined FaZe towards the end of the year. So he picked it up. Pretty good kills still, but low obviously. Deaths to the similar one. ADR, he's actually around FalleN's level, but he's the primary carry of the team. Well, he had Simple as well, and then later he gets Nico. So I guess this year he wasn't the primary. He was supposed to be the second best player. FalleN didn't have to be the second best player in any of these teams, in my opinion. Definitely was nowhere close to the best player. And even he has a 1.07, and people are telling me he underperformed. This is a down year for him. So then why is he 1.07, winning very few tournaments until he gets to FaZe? Meanwhile, FalleN's 1.08, winning everything. Because he was carried, bruh. Not totally, he did his part, but in terms of overall production, being the best player in the team, he was nowhere close. He was never for 1 minute these 2 years the best player on SK Gaming. Now, him being an in-game leader is irrelevant to this particular topic, Because we're talking now about individual players. And when we say individual players, the greatest and the best, we're talking about stars. We're talking about carries. We're talking about the main reason that your team wins. Now, as an in-game leader, he could have been one of the main reasons his team won. But we're talking about as a player. And so when you talk about that, titles are irrelevant. Minus that you get to play deeper in tournaments against more competition. That's good. It's like, yeah, that's true. That's the case. But here's the problem. In the same ways you might play more games that are hard to play in, you have to factor in how good are your teammates and how good are they at their roles and how good is the overall team and the style that you play. And are there any players that are flawed in that feed? Because by the way, when you're in a really great team with everything shored up and a great map pool and you're winning everything, your stats get inflated. You get carried along. There's rounds you don't even have to do anything. Or you can even fuck up and you win. If people like Simple in these years fuck up, if people like Device fuck up, do they win the game? Do they win the major? Do they win it? Do they fuck? None of those players could have stats like FalleN did in 2017 and actually like win 8 tournaments. That would be insane. They win 8 tournaments in their absolute best years, the absolute best player in the world, and the best player in their team, MVPs all day long. That's what happens. That's how you know those players are the truly great, best ever individual players and AWPers. And this guy was a great in-game leader for a couple of years and an overrated player even at his peak. Now, he did in these years, because he had good fragging still, bring a clutch factor. He was one of the best clutch players of anyone actually in the world, which definitely got in people's heads. And his in-game leading was really good. But those two factors made people overrate his actual play in his very best individual years. Simple was a better player at majors. Nico was a better player overall. If you're just taking one raw player in a draft, I'm taking Nico ahead of fucking FalleN. Shocks, likewise, just a great all-round player. He was even in-game leading himself, by the way, as one of the best players in the world. Device, yeah, it wasn't like his best year, and late in games he might choke a bit, but he was also carrying them to that point in games. It was a monster this year, like I just showed you, and a big carry most of the time. So my biggest problem with FalleN is this. Even in these years, he's not a pure AWP carry. His style was more about getting info by scouting out early because he has people behind him who can play spots and play angles, and he has people like Cold Zero who can get you kills otherwise, and Fur who can do a distraction. He's about getting an early pick, then falling back, then playing off the man advantage. He's about winning clutches. This is all nice stuff separately, but the monster thing that a star AWPer does is just kill people with the AWP all day long. Is sit in a spot and lock down on CT. On T-side, you play the whole game around them getting their pick and then them closing it. That's not what you're doing with this guy, and that's not what he was even trying to do. It's why I actually think the in-game leader used the player FalleN very well, but the player FalleN got overrated as a result. You compare him to those other AWPers, he isn't a star like them. He isn't the one that you take to start and build your whole team around. They all are. And then, by the way, let's just look at the majors in this guy's career in general, right? Because obviously, the 2 majors he won are awesome, right? These are 2 of his best ever. He played really great at these 2. That's probably part of what boosted him, because people cared more about the majors, right? This is awesome stuff, yeah. But let's go look before. When he's on Luminosity, I mean, this, by the way, he has Cold Zero at this point in time, you know that. He has Cold Zero and Fur. He's minus 21, 0.77. He has Cold Zero and Fur here as well. He has some pretty good stats. A lot of deaths, you'll notice. A lot of deaths here as well. 1.08 overall. Nothing on this one. When he was just playing as just a whatever, he was just a whatever player. Then he go up, he has these 2 amazing ones. Then let's go into the year when he gets to be 6th on the list. What the fuck is this? Dude, on this one, on both of them, he dies more than he actually kills in terms of averages at these majors. And at this one, he's in the semis, and this one, he's in the quarterfinals. He doesn't even crack a 0.6 rating at this fucking major. 2017, he's number 6 on the list. Then let's go on from that. 2018, when they make the semis, he's a big fat 0. Are you kidding me? Then at the Face It major, he actually pops off at this one. This is the one where they make the semis off kind of a weak bracket. Well, hey, fair enough. It's a nice little bounce back. 2019, they make the semis in this one too. He's a big fat 0. Big fat 0. Do you think if Simple, Guardian, Nico, Device, Kenias have a big fat 0, they can be in like the semis of a major? They're going to be ranked like top 10 in the world. Are you kidding me? Then you go to Berlin. This is a disgrace. Look at the deaths. Look at the kills. Then you go to Stockholm. After the major, he comes back. He's with Liquid. Dying loads. Barely any kills. Then he has, this is the challenger stage. So who gives a shit? We're talking about the real major, the top 16. He's a 0, but with a little bit of a minus. And then this last major, Just a big fat fucking nothing burger again. As the AWPer, the expensive gun that you have to play around and save for, 'cause in these teams, you don't have Cold Zero and Fur. Prime Cold Zero and Fur aren't walking through those doors to actually carry these games for you. Even Fur's years gone past his prime, even though he is El Monstro or whatever. He is a beast, so fair play to him. The other players are out of his fucking league. He's overrated in the majors. And one of them was one of his best years of his career, you're telling me, when he's like a top 5 AWPer of all time. Give me a fucking break. Maybe he was at the majors in 2016. That's it. 1 year. He's been playing from 2015 at Tier 1 through to 2023. I know he's not really Tier 1 now, but he's been in the majors and the Tier 1 thanks to that bullshit RMR system in America. So let's look at what FalleN is, eh? I'll tell you first and foremost, this is one of the problems. He's incredibly charismatic. He might be the most charismatic person I've ever met, and I've met enormous celebrities who felt bigger than life itself and would just like take up all the space in a room. But when this guy talks to you and he looks at you and he makes that eye contact, I'm not talking about what you plebs see through a screen or imagine as you worship him or your stan culture or fucking, I'm in a parasocial. I love FalleN. Gabriel is like my friend and you don't know who he really is and what he means to us. Like, give me a fucking break. In real life, this guy has like an aura around him. He really does. He mesmerizes you when he talks to you. It just makes you want to agree. Oh, yeah, he's making a good point, isn't he? I've got the superpower where I can sort of flip the switch and go assing through that, mate. I do like him, by the way. I actually enjoy talking to him. I think he's a cool guy. I think he even can, when he chooses to be a really awesome guy. So the problem is people want to like him. People want to believe in him. They want to overrate him. They want to say he's better than he is. And I get it. The problem is, even his personality has downsides and weaknesses they ignore. Like, he has been openly dishonest a bunch of times. He has been disingenuous many times. And he has even cheated in and outside of the game. Did you know that? So here's where he was openly dishonest. There was all those videos I did about him when the team wanted to swap from Luminosity to SK Gaming. He was just openly calling the director of SK Gaming like a liar, suggesting he was like swindling them, cheating them, tricking them, that his teammates didn't want to go and they wanted to stay in Luminosity, but this guy was forcing them through contracts and all shit. No. Here's what I heard and why I speculated, and I was right, by the way. It was mainly FalleN that wanted to stay with Luminosity. He had some little deal with that owner. I suspect maybe he was going to get something extra or some sort of shit on the side. That's kind of the way FalleN does business. His teammates wanted to go to SK. They didn't agree with him. They just said nothing because they knew it was going to happen. It was him who wanted to stay. That was totally disingenuous. Quite frankly, dishonest at times. How about when FaZe was being ranked number 1 by me at the end of 2017, even though they kept losing to SK? So how could they be? And we've won 8 tournaments. That's what people kept saying. My rankings go off your 5-man lineup. You won 3 tournaments with Bolts, and 1 was a blast, by the way. The other 5 tournaments were won when Phelps was there ages earlier. My rankings work off a 3-month window. So how the fuck would the 5 tournaments earlier in the year be relevant to this 3-month window at the end of the year? At the end of the year, what mattered was, SK had beaten them heads to head, but FaZe had won a bunch of lands and then come 2nd and 3rd and 4th, all the others. And so overall, if you'd done like a point system, they would be number 1. That's how rankings work. It was 2 different lineups for SK Gaming, but he was out there pushing that narrative too and trying to be like passive aggressive. Oh, well, yeah, Euro was right. I guess the Euro was just number 1. Thought, like, give me a break. Give me a fucking break. I see through that shit, mate. Then I'll tell you when he cheated. First of all, in the game, like at Pro League Season 3 finals, it was illegal to do pixel walks, and he just did a pixel walk in like overtime of the 5th map of that epic series against G2 on Inferno with the AWP to try and like get a pick or see something. That should be illegal. That should be a punishment right there. That should be probably even be a disqualification. Then, remember what you all did to fucking Olaf Meister. Then there's the thing where E-League, you have tech pauses, you're not allowed to talk. He was just talking to his teammates, talking through strategy, what the fuck? I even had to actually go at E-League and tell the fucking people, get out there now and fucking stop him. I can see him on the camera here on the feed that we have in the green room. I can see him fucking talking to them. He's talking. And they had to go and warn him and tell him not to do that. There's other times that's happened, by the way. There was some tournament where you had where they got fined for something similar, I believe. Maybe it was like an ESL Cologne or whatever. Then how about this? He also uses the media against his opponents and other people in the scene. Like, how about when he wasn't even playing there and there was that tournament, what was it, was it DreamHack Montreal or something? There was like a DreamHack where it was the Immortals guys, Henny and all them, playing against Cloud9 with nothing, and I think even Sean Gare still back then. And when they were playing in the finals, it was either Henny or Lucas, had like a baseball cap that was going under, so they propped their headset open a bit like this. So they could potentially hear sound leak into their ears through those big headsets that you have. And obviously, when people saw this, they were like, why are they using, it was either they were using their own headset or having the hat or the baseball cap or something like that. And basically, when Cloud9 pointed out, what the fuck's going on? This is not allowed. The demand was that the whole game it had to just be forgotten about. And then basically like, oh, don't worry. And FalleN did this tweet where he said, only pussies try to win no matter what. That was a quote. Wait a minute. You've cheated yourself, bro. You've repeatedly tried to do everything to win, no matter what, whether legal or otherwise, whether honest or otherwise, whether actually reasonable context or otherwise. And then I'll just throw it in there. Then there was that whole thing where Luminosity played against Team Liquid at RGM Pro Series in 2015, and the cameraman or whatever tripped over the cable, and it came out, and it was up to the admins as to whether you restart or not. But FalleN and the others were trying to put the pressure on Team Liquid and Hiko, who was making the decisions. Like, you just agree to do a restart with us, bro. Just agree. And then their fans are getting all riled up. And that's why when Hiko went to Brazil the next year, he had to have bodyguards because that's how afraid he was, because he had so many death threats to him and his mother's Facebook. I can't fuck with that. I can't abide with that behaviour. I think that's actually fucking disgusting. Now, what's funny is, despite all that, I do like FalleN as a person. I actually think he has a very good social media approach generally. He tries not to like openly flame, he just sort of banters a bit, and he knows when to tank it, and he knows when to make a statement. Nowadays, he's a lot better. Now, here's the thing. He also is the godfather of Brazilian CS. That's not overrated at all. Like, they were going nowhere before him. He got them back to majors, which is relevance. Then he got them top 8 at majors. Then got them elite, and they were winning majors. Then they were the best team for 2 years in aggregate. He helped teach them how to play CS again, along with Zeus. This is amazing. But by the way, obviously, this tweet's about him being a player, but even as an IGL, he was washed, though. As a pure IGL, he had those 2 years and that's it. 3, actually, 2015 to 2018. He hasn't had the feel for the meta and how to IGL in CSGO for 5.5 years. That's how long ago 2017 was. Look it up. He's even admitted himself on camera publicly, and certainly I've talked to him about this, that he lost his read on the meta, his feel for how to call. His map pools got really fucking embarrassing in some of those teams over those years, by the way. Remember when they just couldn't even win on Inferno in like late 2017 and through 2018, when he had the best pit player in the world at the A site in Cold Zero. And then they just couldn't play that rework a nuke and had to just perma it all the time. And if they let it through, just get spanked on it. That's a fucking tactical map. If you're a great IGL, you get busy on that map. Now contrast that when Astralis wasn't big fans of nuke originally when they had Kirby. Remember in the Atlanta final when they played against Virtus Pro in the opener? A lot of people don't remember that game. It was a really amazing game. It was like 12-12 at one point in time. It was back and forth. That wasn't even a map that they were playing. That was in theory like a semi-punish pick / home map pick for VP. But they could get busy on it. FalleN's teams weren't fucking doing that in this era, by the way. So to me, I get it. People don't understand tactics. They don't understand team setups. They don't understand who does what, carrying the load, how you make it easier for other people if you're a superstar, and then your in-game leader has an easier job, and then his teammate has an easier job. They don't get that. There's just parrot who's a top IGL and a great ARPA and a combat. Oh, they just say all the things they've heard on stream. Then look at the talent he had. Like 2017 players are fucking bonkers. He has like forget HLT, he has 2 top 5 players in the world. Fur could have been like player of the year if he wasn't on the same team as Cold Zero. That's how unbelievable this guy was. They didn't even degrade in 2018 fully, besides Fur starting to not care maybe. Then after that, what did he do when his team went downhill? Oh, he brought in 2 major winners, reigning major champions. Stewie and Tarek came in. Do you remember that? Now, Stewie, the next year in Team Liquid, night and day how good he looked, how he fit the team. Under FalleN, nothing happening. Then Tarek, remember, he looked like a bomb when he was in MIBR, but he goes to NRG and EG. They're amazing again. They're winning tournaments the next year like Team Liquid. The next year, these 2 guys are in top 2 teams in the world winning championships while FalleN's doing fuck all over in MIBR. Then he had KNG in 2019, who had a monstrous amount of talent, but was just wasted and couldn't be used. Then how about my boy Zeus, who came back after Team Liquid, that amazing stint where they used to rock FalleN and fucking SK's world constantly when he was in Team Liquid. Even when they had fucking JDM and Stanislaw, go look it up. So he comes back to help out in MIBR, get some semis of a major again, starting to get things fixed, bringing in players. And when things start to go bad in 2020, they just scapegoat him and fucking fire him. Just straight fire his ass at Flashpoint 1, right? That doesn't sit well with me. Doing that to people who helped you. And what? So you don't get blamed. So you can keep collecting your massive fucking paycheck. Also, let's just say this as well. He's won way fewer trophies than you think. You're thinking, oh, he's so successful. He must be like right up there with the grit. No. He's won 13 total trophies on LAN. And of those 13, I'll just run through. One was a Zotac Cup that no one cares about. So that's 12. Then one was Blast Copenhagen, which was not only like BO1s until the final, but then in the final you played Astralis, who didn't have Device, their best player. They had Dupree using the AWP, who was actually going to carry that tournament and was one round from winning and would have been the MVP. Yeah, you won that one. That's a blast, though. Who cares? So take the blast off. Now we're down to 11 tournament trophies. Then he won a CS Summit that was against nobodies, not the good ones. Gambit was like the best team they played there, by the way, when Gambit could barely win best of threes. So now we're down to, 10 trophies? Then there was DreamHack Austin during their era, which was just NA teams. And only at the time, the best team was Team Liquid was Simple. That's it. That's all, and that's a land. So take 4 of those trophies off right now. We're down to 9 trophies. Then of the 9, one's DreamHack Summit in 2017, which didn't have most of the world's best teams. It didn't have the other 2 contenders for number 1, FaZe and SK. So you know what, we'll pop that off. We're looking for the absolute primo trophies. So we're down to 8 now. Now these are 8 high quality trophies. Of them, 3 are mega legit. We've got 2 majors, Columbus, Cologne. Then we've got Cologne 2017, not a major. Yes, Astralis skipped it. It was a world top, but still FaZe is there, Navi's there, Cloud9's there. Loads of good teams there. That one's legit. Those 3 are really legit trophies. Then in terms of like a tier down, you also have non-prestige trophies that are really good, like Win ESL Pro League Season 3, IEM Sydney, ECS Season 3, Epicenter, EPL Season 6. Those are all very good Tier 1 tournaments. Do you know the only problem, guys? The trophies I just listed once we got down to the 9, 100% of them are in 2016 or 2017. I thought you said this was one of the greatest IGLs of all time. I thought you guys thought this guy is an absolute monster. I thought he's a beast, at least as an IGL, right? And by the way, I made that tweet in 2022. I'm not even judging him as an IGL, but you're like 4 or 5 years removed from winning trophies. And people want to call you one of the best IGLs ever as well. Can't abide by it. Here's the other thing. He was a very well-paid player. I know that you guys don't. He has had a sick salary since 2016 among the best in the world, including on the bad years of MIBR, including on Imperial. If you knew how high it was, I dare him to reveal how much it was. Your mind would be blown that someone's being paid to be that bad individually and that average or underwhelming as an IGL. As a player, because it's all about being a player in that tweet, he has been bang average overall for about 5 years. And as an AWPer, he's been below average at Tier 1. He showed a few glimpses under Yanko, who was completely scapegoated as well by the team and the fucking fans, in 2018 in the latter part. As an AWPer, a very important Tier 1 role, he is mega overrated. Mega. He costs his team's economy by using the gun all the time. They have to save it, they have to give him it, they have to drop it. And if he wasn't in a team with 2 strong riflers, and he hasn't been for years now, they go nowhere. They're irrelevant. They're never going to win the tournament. They can barely ever go to playoffs or go deep. And by the way, he hasn't had something like that with the 2 strong riflers since 2019? That's how long ago you'd have to go. Now let's go back to my tweet, shall we? Remember what I said in that tweet? This was solely about him as a player. And what did I say? Most overrated player in history, explained how overrated works, has never even been the best player on any lineup. He's never been the best player on any lineup. Not in 2016, not in 2017. You could argue he's the 3rd best player, at least like HLTV does, in 2017. You could even argue the 4th. You want to go pure player, not IGL as well. Then you go the other years, there's loads of players better than him. He was overrated individually those 2 years, like I pointed out, in a silly manner, in my opinion, especially 2017. Go look at those fucking majors. What a disgrace. And you think how good FalleN and Fur and fucking Cold Zero were at that time. I mean, that would be like when Real Madrid had Ronaldo and they win all those European Champions League. That would be like saying Real Madrid had 2 or 3 players that are better than Messi because Barcelona didn't win. You think how absurd that would be, football fans. So that's why he was never the best player. I contrasted him with Zidane. Spoiler, Zidane was the best player on some of his teams. He might have been the best player in the world at some point in time. He's a GOAT contender player, in my opinion. Arguably the best midfield player ever. And what else did FalleN have? Oh, that's right. He had like 2 good years as a player. Zidane had insane longevity. He went between regions, between teams, between styles of play. He had success and a high level of play with all kinds of teammates, all styles of play, all styles of coach, all styles of fucking regional play, all of it. FalleN is nothing like that, career for career, play for play. No way. He doesn't even compare to a fucking Zidane. People are acting like FalleN is Guardian or Kenny S over there his whole career. People are acting like he's Glaive or Carrigan over his whole career. Nah, he isn't. He's not in their class. Even though, yeah, for 2 years as a player with the right team and incredible teammates all around the positions, amazing coach, some of the best individual stars in the world. Yeah, he could do damage against those AWPers like Kenny S and Guardian and Device. Yeah, I get that. And Simple and their teams. And that's why they stupidly still big him up. Like when people like Simple talk about how amazing, oh, you couldn't understand, I couldn't do anything against him, bro. It's a bit like when Dupree was like, Prime FalleN was better than Simple. It's like, no, his team was, mate. Go look how bad 2018 Na'Vi was. Go look how bad they were. This guy was never actually a better primary AWPer as the star role than Device, Kenny S, Guardian. Well, it's a bit all on Guardian on that 1 year, but obviously had the hand injury. Fucking Simple, Ziwu, modern day people, Shiro. Although he hasn't had to go too deep at majors, admittedly, at this point in his career. So to me, this whole thing's just whack. By my definition, he is the most overrated CSGO player ever. Remember, you can get free gamer sub samples. Go to the website, free international shipping. Use the code Thorin, THORIN. Only today, though, ends this weekend. I've been pleasantly surprised during the time I've had my Patreon and my Patreon community, the Skrilluminati, by both the financial support they've provided and the moral support. And so this video was kindly supported and made possible by Starlust, Theo Buenzli, Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Torin, Jensen Goh, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Bot Pounder 420, Yurka86, Tosh, and as always, you know it, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to ask a question in one of those AMAs where I tend to go pretty in depth? Sometimes they even spin out into their own videos. Do you want teasers to find out who the upcoming guests are for the myriad of interviews that I do across esports? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest? We have a channel on my Discord where you can do that if you're at the right tier. And of course, you could potentially take part in one of those lengthy esports discussions with me about whatever is on your mind in the scene. Well, if any of those perks sound tantalizing, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.